TV media in India, I can tell you for a fact that working with an emerging media platform like hashtag our stories, it actually broadens your horizon, and and it's a constant learning process, and it offers you so much more than what you learn in a traditional setup.
Thank you so much, Shweta. I really appreciate it. Cool, guys. So my introduction, my name is Yusuf Omar. I am a journalist. I've been a journalist for about 11 years now. When I was like 21 years old, I wanted to be a foreign correspondent. I wanted to cover wars and natural disasters. Anyone in the room, by show of hands, have aspirations of being a correspondent or telling stories out in the field? Yeah, a couple of you guys. So that was my dream. And like when I used to apply to newsrooms to do that, they all said no. They were like, you're too young, you don't have enough experience, we don't have budget. So basically, I gave them the middle finger. And in 2010, I started hitchhiking, catching rides. How do you say hitchhiking in Hindi? Is there a word for hitchhiking in Hindi? Anyone know a word for that? Well, I started hitchhiking, and I started hitchhiking from South Africa, which is at the bottom of Africa, all the way to Syria, which is in the Middle East. So 12,000 kilometers. I started catching rides up Africa, telling stories, meeting people. And it was along that journey that I became this like one-man band storyteller, being able to do everything on my own: shoot, edit, produce, make videos and stories. Ended up getting stuck in Egypt during the first Arab Spring, ended up going to Congo in 2012 when a big ammunitions depot exploded, got smuggled into Syria in 2014 to cover the Syrian civil war. Ended up becoming a correspondent and working on television for a number of years in South Africa, then moved to India, my people, where I was at the Hindustan Times as the mobile editor, trained up 750 people to make videos with their phones, then moved to CNN International in London, where I became a senior social media reporter, covered a lot of major stories, worked on Snapchat, and that was supposed to be my dream job. Like I got to CNN and I was like, yay, I made it. Wow, look at me. And then I hated it. I really didn't enjoy it. You've got to be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. And what I noticed was a few things. One, traditional media were out of touch. They weren't talking to real people and hearing real stories anymore. They're speaking to the experts and the commentators and the politicians, and not the real people on the ground. And that's why they didn't think Trump was going to win the elections. They didn't think Brexit was going to happen. Or even in the Indian context, people are so surprised that Modi is as influential as he is, because they're not speaking to people on the ground. So that was one. And I was like, okay, if we're really going to know what's going on, we got to have a more diverse newsroom. And you can never have a newsroom that's diverse enough to cover a global and interconnected world. So what if we train communities to tell their own stories with mobile phones? The second thing was I was obsessed, like there was this obsession with negativity. All the stories were so dark, like 20 people had to die before we covered a story. Or if it's in India, 200 people had to die before we covered the story. And there's so much amazing, positive, constructive journalism that's happening, like people that are making the world a better place. So then I started talking about this idea. Went to conferences and I was like, hey, people with phones can tell stories and we can fact check it as journalists. And people laughed at us. The political editor at the BBC was like, what you're doing is not journalism. I would die rather than do what you do. He literally said that to me on stage. It was recorded. And that's when we realized, I was like, shit, they don't know. They don't know that there's a huge opportunity here. There's an opportunity to work with communities around the world to tell their own stories. And if they're not going to do it, somebody's got to do it. So we'll do it. So we started hashtag our stories in 2017 and traveled all over the world, trained a bunch of communities, came to India tons of times, trained to help communities tell stories with mobile phones, and then started producing content and started producing videos on Facebook. Then we got an investment from Snapchat. We started producing shows on Snapchat. And we've just grown really fast. At the start of the pandemic, we had 3 or 4 staff. Today, we have about 85 people on the team. And the biggest growth that we're experiencing and we're going to experience over the next year and potentially further is going to be in the Indian team. We've just launched our first India product. It's going really well. They're reaching millions and millions of people. Shweta, I don't know how many subscribers you guys have amassed already, but I imagine it's, I'll check, but it's probably hundreds of thousands. And we're just getting warmed up. So Devadas, that's a quick introduction as to the who I am.
Yeah, that's good. And you can also just share your experience in ACJ.
ACJ, oh, we're at 58,000 subs so far. With the brand new channel, the Indian channel. ACJ was awesome. Basically, Prof Dev got in touch via Facebook and was like, hey, I heard you're in India. Why don't we fly you out to the campus for a couple of days, meet some of our students. And I ended up staying a lot longer than I expected. I think I probably stayed for like a week. It was really cool. I remember it was the first university I've ever been to where you got to take your shoes off when you go inside the studio. And I'll never forget that. At first I was like, this is weird. Then I was like, this is comfy. And we had so much fun. We made a show. We made like a 12-minute show with all of the students covering all kinds of stuff. I mean, at the time there was a story that was happening where in India, I'm sure you guys remember it, where ads for condoms were being banned during daylight hours, which is the most absurd idea for a country that really needs condoms. And that was one of many stories that we covered with the students. Amazing experience, did some drone journalism, did some 360 VR stuff, ended up broadcasting like a live show, ended up doing all kinds of crazy stories. Then hired a stack of ACJ folks, and then we've continued to hire. In fact, I think most of our India hires historically have been from ACJ. So yeah, it's been a long and really good relationship with the folks there.
Yeah, all yours, Yusuf. Now you can start with the storytelling, social storytelling now, if you don't mind, please.
Yeah, 100%. So I think a lot of young people today, surprisingly, still, especially in the Indian context, still aspire to traditional platforms. Their goal, once graduating from university, is I want to be at NDTV or I want to be at the Hindustan Times. And that's great and that's aspirational, but I think you, especially for you young folks who are about to start your careers, you can spend your entire career trying to fix one of these old Indian media companies, or you can build a new one or help build a new one. And I think what you will find is those giants in India, because it's one of the few places in the world where print is still making money and TV is still sustainable, that in some respects, they've been quite slow to innovate. They've almost sat on their bums and been like, it's okay, we're still selling newspapers, things are good. In other respects, they're innovating very quickly. You guys are the biggest Facebook market in the world. Social media is massive in India. There's lots of inroads. But I think that there's a risk in the traditional media landscape that you can end up, one, stuck doing very traditional formats, and two, obviously the political dynamics that come with old Indian families that often run a lot of these media organizations. The digital media landscape right now is at the it's at the pinnacle of perhaps the biggest disruption we'll ever see. So when we look at the way people engage with technology, when I Google something or I YouTube something or I look for something on Facebook or an Instagram hashtag, how do I search for that? I generally search for that with a keyboard, either with a physical keyboard or with a keyboard on your phone, right? Your QWERTY keyboard. The primary input to technology at the moment is a keyboard, right? We can all agree on that. Or maybe voice to some degree. We might use voice but I don't know. Google can be racist. It doesn't understand my voice sometimes. That is about to change. The primary input to technology is about to become the camera in every interaction that you have with the world. You will scan things to pay for them. You will look up at the sky through your camera and see what the weather is like. You'll point at a friend and you'll remember his name and the name of his kids. You'll have access to layers and layers of information through the mobile camera. It's a big shift. It's a huge shift. It changes the way we interact with technology. And India, I think, is going to be at the front and center of this because you have such a large population of people that are often illiterate or have very little knowledge of reading and writing, but will be perfectly ready for a camera-first revolution. As this happens, as we transition from a QWERTY-based world where we search for things with a keyboard to a camera-based world, the media landscape is going to shift in a very big way. We're going to go from thinking about stories being presented in vertical video or YouTube or Facebook or Instagram as kind of these 2D kind of formats of experience on this glass screen that we call our phone, where we're totally removed from the world, we're consuming here. And by the way, I think that the current way that we engage with the internet has a lot of friction, right? Friction meaning when I'm doing this, I can't really be looking out here anymore. Can't use my phone while I'm driving. Can't really do anything while I'm on my phone. Can't even walk in a straight line. We're going to move to a world where it's now the internet is layered onto the world through the camera. And over the next 9 years, that transition is going to move from the mobile phone to a wearable camera on your face. I've got my spectacles somewhere here, but camera sunglasses that have computers that lay information. So what have we said so far? We've said today, QWERTY keyboards, input, YouTube, Facebook. Tomorrow, camera first interactions with the world. Now, between there and there, there's a lot of learnings that we have to do. And I don't think any journals and publications have quite figured out what that world looks like yet. What does that immersive world looks like yet, where you feel like you're in a story, or where the story is in your home, where you guys are sitting in your house right now, but you open up your mobile camera and there's an informal settlement, a slum community all over your dining room table, and you're able to engage with that in interesting ways. Nobody's figured that out yet. So I think my best advice to you is, when thinking about strategies for the future of digital media, don't build for how people are consuming necessarily today. And definitely don't prepare for how they were consuming yesterday. Don't try and look at how people made YouTube videos 5 years ago and try and do that, or Facebook videos. Understand where we're going, which is this immersive, augmented, virtual landscape. And then work out what are the building blocks I need as a storyteller so I'm ready for that future. And those building blocks are an understanding of all of these different disciplines, which sometimes sound like buzzwords, but when it all comes together, it really shifts the way we do things. Hey, Sharanya's on this call. He's another ACJ grad and current #OurStories employee, an absolute rock star. You know he's a rock star when he doesn't wear sleeves to work. That's a common trait of a rock star. So yeah, that's where I want you guys to be thinking, or at least I'd suggest you think. Today, where's the action at in terms of if you're getting into a media landscape today? Today, I would be hyper-focused on the stories format. Vertical, video, clickable, interactive content, right? At least for us at #OurStories, we took a really big bet on this about 4 years ago. We were like, we think vertical video is going to be big, and it was. We were like, we think the stories format is going to be big, and it was. We were like, we think this like clickable content is going to be big, and it was. And in the same respects, like, as you guys are getting into the media landscape, you're going to be tempted to want to do all the platforms well. You're going to be tempted to get into a newsroom or start your own newsroom and be like, okay, cool. We're going to do this on Twitter. We're going to do this on Instagram. And we're going to do this on Facebook. And we're going to do this on Snapchat. And if TikTok ever comes back to India, we're going to do this. The reality is that for most media organizations, it's really, really hard to do all of those things well. Or in Indian newsrooms, they're often like, we're going to do a website. You're going to come to our website, or you're going to have an app. By the way, neither of those two options I particularly subscribe to. I think go to where the audiences are on social platforms. But when you do go to where they are on social platforms, pick your platform and excel at that platform. Obviously, there's a risk to that in terms of putting all of your eggs in one basket. But like, if you see a gap in the Indian Instagram journalism space, focus. Be like, I'm gonna kick ass at this. I'm not gonna get distracted and try and like, let them do YouTube. They're doing YouTube, they'll do it well. Like, focus in on one platform. That's what we did. We focused in on Snap. We said, we're gonna kick ass at Snap. We think Snap's gonna be a really big company. And it is, and it's doing really well in India. So that's another piece of advice I'd give you is so I suppose the first tip I said was build for the future, not for the past. Understand where it's going and have those building blocks in place. And two, really focus in on one particular, take a bet. Take a bet on what platform and what formats you think are going to work and focus in on that. And I think the third thing I would say is when you think about digital publishing, when in the past, we used to think about success as having one Facebook account with 10 million followers, or even in India, that's probably small. That's like a small village in Chennai. You think of one Facebook account with 100 million followers. I think the future of digital media is going to be a lot more segmented than that and a lot more personalized. You know, Andy Warhol's famous saying that we're all going to, you know, I think it was Andy Warhol. Who was it? 5 minutes. Everyone will have their 5 minutes of fame. I think that's going to happen. I think it is happening. And I think digital media is a little bit more segmented, and you're more valuable having 10 or 15 different channels catering to different audiences than you are having this one mega ship. If Nike want to advertise on your platform, they don't need 10 million Indians from across India. They need 5,000 people that actually run, right? If they're going to advertise for a running shoe. And I think that we've also at #OurStories thought about our content in the same way. We've very quickly segmented our audience into different verticals. We failed initially. When we started with country-specific verticals. We're like, we're gonna have a show for India, and we had a Sri Lankan one, and we had a Palestine one, and we had an Australian one, and that didn't work. We didn't have the bandwidth or the capacity, and also different countries didn't make sense to us. Now we're mainly focused on topic-specific verticals. So we have a show on gun violence, and we have a show on mental health, and a show on physical health, and a show on entrepreneurship, and a show on sex ed. And that's been a lot more beneficial to us. So really think about segmenting your audience into different topics. And all in all, I think a lot of my friends in India are often waiting for this like dream job to come their way. They're waiting to be, you know, an editor-in-chief of an organization that they're interested in, or, you know, they want to work for BBC India, whatever it is. I think my advice, and it kind of goes back to what I said at the start, like, if you can't find your dream job, make one for yourself. You guys are in a perfect position where basically there's a bunch of India papas that run most of the major Indian media companies, and they don't know what's going on. And you're in a perfect position to disrupt it, to start your own media companies, to launch your own thing, to fundamentally disrupt that landscape, or work with a startup that's doing something cool. If anything, if India needs one thing right now, it's good free press that's going to challenge everything. You know, it's going to hold power to account. It's going to call BS when it sees it. It's going to call racism when it identifies it. And all of you guys are going to be part of that solution. And the beauty of digital media is they'll struggle to shut you down in the same way that they will for newspapers or TV stations and all the rest. So the power really is in your pocket. It really is a mobile phone and the ability to reach millions of people on mobile phones across your country. Cool. I'd love to take some questions, or Shweta, or anybody from the #OurStories team, Sharanya, or anybody, if you guys have anything else you want to add.
Yes, I do, as a matter of fact. So, often when I speak to college students or prospective journalists, one of the things I keep hearing is that they wait around for a job to come their way from a traditional media company. So, be it a Hindustan Times or be it an NDTV, or as you rightly pointed out, from a traditional media organization like a BBC. And that can take a toll because you're waiting and you're endlessly waiting. And then once you get a job, you realize that it's not as free as you thought it will be, and you have to toe a certain line because whether we like it or not, every Indian media company today has a certain ideology. And so, be it left of center or right of center, you don't get the power to make your own decision. You don't get to choose what you want to do, and you don't get to do the kind of stories that you thought you will be doing when you become a full-fledged journalist. And that is what traditional media stops you from doing. It stops you from doing independent journalism. And therefore, as you may know by now, a lot of journalists, be it veteran journalists like Punya Prasanna Bajpayee or be it Faye D'Souza, they're going independent. The reason being because when you have your own platform, it allows you to do the stories that you want to do, that you think is deserving of your audience. And that is exactly what young new age internet media companies are allowing you to do. So be it a scroll or be it hashtag or stories or be it the Logical Indian, they allow you to do the stories that you think are relevant to the audience, to a younger millennial audience, the right kind of stories, and the stories that are worthy of our attention, and not just the political bickering, he said, she said. And therefore, I think it's all the more important for youngsters, young students to make informed choices. And you have the opportunity right now, as Yusuf rightly said, don't wait around. Grab the opportunity, become an entrepreneur, or join a company that you think reflects your values, allows you to do the kind of journalism you thought you'll be doing when you get into the market. And so I think the time is now. And it's not just because, something I think at one place that I disagree with Yusuf, it's not because most Indians are uneducated that lenses is the future or AI is the future or camera is the future. I think it's also because of the internet penetration, whether we like it or not, because there is this immense internet penetration, and more than 50% of this country has access to cheap data. It becomes very easy for us to share stories, to disseminate them using various social media platforms that are available to us. So I think it's about time that we start, and stories are happening everywhere. If you go through the channels that we've launched on hashtag our stories, you'll realize from physical health to mental health to sex ed to our India, stories are happening every day in each person's life, and we're all storytellers in one way or the other. And hashtag our stories gives you that opportunity to actually tell your personal story. So we tell first person stories, and because we allow people to tell their own stories, I think we're making more of an impact than any other traditional media organization. So I think all of you, as a matter of fact, have that opportunity right now to start up on your own, to go out there, to do the story you like and put it out on various social media platforms that are available to you, options that were not available to you maybe even a couple of years back.
Sharanyo, would you like to add something? Is he there?
Could you please unmute Sharanya Gupta?
Sharanyo, would you like to add?
He can't. Okay. Srini, could you please unmute Sharanya? And Sharanya is a ladies and gentleman of last year.
Yeah, I've done that.
Yes. Hi, people. I can unmute myself now. Thank you for the opportunity. And
Thanks meeting you, Sharanya.
thank you, Ganesh sir. Thank you, Dev sir. And I think it's I think I would disagree like a little bit with Shweta, like in the sense that always pursue a job like which you feel that that suits your role, like that kind of like that instead of like going for a certain company that you find that you might just like align with the way you are thinking. I think it's more about like you find a role that you see yourself in the future, that you see yourself what you're doing. So just pursue that, and I think that's the best way you can like, I mean, it says that like it starts with small steps. So small steps matter, right? So even like like we all aspire to someday work with the finest newsrooms, and I think it's universal, right? Like everybody wants to do that, but just pursue what you want to do, because only if you like, probably will start with your mistakes. Like I remember, like when I was making documentaries at ACJ and Dev sir was teaching us, like, I made my own set of mistakes, and like putting yourself out there, doing that is what makes the difference. So just keep doing, like, like what you really want to do, what you really aspire to do. And I think these small steps take you like where you actually want to go someday. So yeah, that's all I had to say.
Yeah, thank you, Sharanyo. Guys, now he will take questions. Yusuf, you can pick people, whoever raise hands. You can raise hands, and I'll leave it to you, Yusuf.
Okay. I don't see any hands right now. Dristy, were you combing your hair, or was that a hand? I'm joking. Let me have a look. Anyone? Yeah, Ananya.
So I want to talk about, we have a regional languages. There are so many regional languages in the country, and a spectrum of regional content in regional languages is also increasing. So how do you see the rise of regional language in the content? And because I have been reading a couple of things where people are saying, people have written widely about Hindi blogs will not work, or Hindi vlogs will not work, but people are shifting to English, which I don't agree specifically, or any regional language or Hindi per se. But like, how do you see like the regional languages coming in near future?
I think in India and around the world, some of the biggest growth in traditional media organizations are in vernacular languages or non-English languages. So in the context of South Africa, for example, the fastest growing newspapers are Zulu and any language apart from English. In fact, the English language newspapers are dropping in circulation. And even in India, you see the Hindi language newspapers tend to do very well and seem to continually see growth. At least from our perspective with hashtag our India, which is our Indian channel, we wouldn't be able to do it if we didn't cover stories in a variety of languages. And the main reason for that is it would be too exclusive. If you really wanted to showcase marginalized communities and hear unheard voices and really tap into stories, and you only did English language stories, you'd be speaking to a bunch of people that are in con market. So yeah, I think it's nonsense, the idea that everything has to go English. I think quite the opposite. I think people are going to create incredibly successful media companies in other languages. Shweta, would you add anything to that?
Yes, absolutely. So in the last couple of months, we've done stories in Hindi, we've done stories in Tamil, and we're also going to do stories in Telugu. So one of the ideas of having Our India as a separate channel is that we want to tap into the diversity of this country, be it the language diversity or diversity with respect to, the communities that we have. So as Yusuf is right, if we were to only cater to the English audience, we would be mostly speaking to people roaming around in CP or Khan market. And that's not what we want to do. We actually want to tap into the last man standing who has access to internet. So I think that's only possible, and also perhaps do variety of stories that make an impact. And that's only possible if you're able to tap into as many languages as we can. And that is exactly what we're doing, not just in terms of the stories we cover, but also in the hiring process. Very happy to report that we are hiring from north, south, east, west. We've just recently made a hire from Symbiosis, someone who speaks in Telugu. Sharanya speaks in Bengali, with people from Delhi. So we're actually expanding our team so as to tap into the Indian market and make sure we have more workforce in place who are able to speak in different languages and therefore can get us stories in various vernacular languages.
Yeah, I mean, even we just had a conversation yesterday. The most urgent hire that we need on the Our India team is translators for a variety of languages.
Anybody else? Any questions, guys? Just raise your hands.
Thanks for the Insta post, Shivanji.
It's okay, sir. I mean, oh my God.
You're pronouncing her name incorrect. It's Shivangi.
I mean,
What?
it's okay. It's definitely okay.
The G is like a D.
Yeah, Gi. It's Shivangi. Yes.
Shivangi.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah, I think Karthik has raised his hand. Karthik?
I'm too well colonized, you see. I can't even pronounce names anymore. It's terrible.
Okay.
That's
Well,
okay.
White man did to us. Hey, Karthik.
I actually I had a question for Shweta ma'am here. Adding on to what you had already spoken about the vernacular languages. One thing I noticed is that we don't since there is a demand for new the regional languages, and people will want to learn other languages also. There is no single platform which could teach these languages. For example, if I'm a Malayali, if I want to learn Bengali, there's no app or there's no platform which could teach, just like Duolingo. There's an app called Duolingo which teaches you multiple languages, and it once you go through the program, at least you get an idea what a language is, and you can apply it on your daily life. So don't you think it will be $1 million idea to create a social network or an app which would enable people to learn these languages?
It is $1 million idea, Karthik. Absolutely. Why not? I think we do have a couple of apps here and there that teach you one language or the other. I was in Bangalore for last 2 years, tried my best and my hands at learning the local language, failed miserably. And I wondered whether there was a platform available where I could learn the language in a month or 2 months or 3 months, at least the basics of it. So I think, yes, I think you should get on with it. Absolutely. Sorry, does that answer your question?
That was, but what I wanted to know was like, if I'm thinking about it, why is not people, other people in the media never thought about this? Because this is very obvious.
Yeah, but I think, Karthik, this is also going to require part IT skills, part engineering skills, and will be a drift from media per se. If you are to come up with a social media platform that caters to different languages or teaches different languages. Now, as far as catering to different languages is concerned, every social media platform is doing that at the moment, right? You have Facebook caters to most languages. It caters to Tamil, caters to Telugu. Then you have Hindi Facebook, you have English Facebook. So you'll see that all vernacular languages are being catered to not just by social media companies, also by traditional media companies. I mean, look at BBC. BBC has expanded so much in the last couple of years, especially in vernacular languages, because they know that's the market. You have more English-speaking people in Chennai or in Tamil Nadu as opposed to what you have in a Madhya Pradesh or in perhaps West Bengal. So I think South as a market, which has not been tapped into so far, barring I think just one platform, which is the News Minute, which is the only platform that I think caters to the South Indian market as far as news in English and in languages is concerned. It's a huge untapped market. And I think traditional media companies and new media companies both are trying very, very hard to cater to that market.
I'm so glad I brought Shweta to this meeting. I'm out of my depth, guys.
Shivangi, you can go ahead.
Sir, my hand is not raised. I'm still thinking about a question.
Anybody else?
Sir, may I go ahead? So this is Ashutosh. May I go ahead, sir?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Hi, sir. My question is to Yusuf, sir. Sir, in India, the basic problem before starting any business, or especially when we are talking about media organization, is about the revenue model. And in India, you also touched upon the political dynamics of the, in the newsrooms and all. So that is also dependent on the revenue model. So how did you crack that formula of revenue model, which is really important in starting any kind of business, and especially in the field of journalism? So how did you go about that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it's one of the more common questions. In short, how are you making money? How are you sustaining this? One, you know how I spoke about being focused on one platform or focused specifically on doing one thing well? The other half of that sentence is focus on platforms where you can see a future revenue stream, right? So take Instagram, for example. outside of branded content, meaning somebody sponsoring your videos, there's no built-in revenue stream. There's no mid-roll ads, pre-roll ads. In fact, the only money that's being made is being made by Facebook. So if you were going down that path and you were starting a media company, you're like, hey, I'm going all in on Instagram, then you better be damn sure that you've got branded partners or somebody that's going to help sponsor that. So one, our first revenue stream is ad revenue, and we've been razor focused on ad revenue on Snapchat and now Facebook. We're doing pretty well on Facebook as well. We've grown really quickly and we're earning decent ad revenue. Two is branded content. So you do branded partnerships. For us, we're really strict about this. We'll only do branded partnerships on work that we would do for free. That's how good the story has to be. It has to be somebody doing social good or positive change. We're not going to do an ad for some underpants or a car or something stupid. Three, we do training and speeches and all that kind of stuff. Four, we sell technology. So all of the augmented reality work we do, the toolkits that we create, we provide that to communities and we sell that to businesses. And five, syndication and licensing. So we have a show on NBC television in the US, for example, and they pay us for that. So it's important to have, if my first point was pick platforms that you're able to monetize on, my second point is have a diversity of revenue streams. Don't put all of your eggs in one basket, because if you build your house on somebody else's land and that land gets taken away, you're pretty screwed.
Thank you, sir.
Who else? Yeah, raise your hand, please. Yeah. I can't see any hands risen.
Is that Kanjik Ghosh, I think, has raised their hand, if I'm pronouncing the name correct.
Yeah, it's correct.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So my question was that you said that in the days to come or in the years to come, we'll see the media being very much more segmented in its nature. Now, when we talk about starting like 5 years back, it was easier to reach across to your audience because, you were starting nascent, it was nascent, the internet was nascent, and it was easier to reach out to the audience. But now with the internet audience getting segmented, the rise of regional challenges, does it not make it increasingly difficult for social media platforms or like yours to reach out to a wide set of audience, because now people have preferences that you need to cater to?
It's a great question. The first thing I'd say is look for platforms that don't have equilibrium. So YouTube has equilibrium, meaning there's a shitload of audience and there's also a shitload of creators. So it's very competitive. Platforms like Facebook, surprisingly, have shitloads of audience, but not that many professional creators, still pretty limited. Instagram Reels, even more, huge audience, very few creators. So if you find platforms that lack equilibrium, big audience, small amount of creators, you can cut through that noise very quickly and still reach large audiences. So that's the first thing. Two, I think it's about targeting. In the same way that advertisers will target content to reach that demographic and find those large audiences, with publishers, often people only think about the content. They're like, oh, we're gonna make this video and this is the subject matter. And they don't spend enough time thinking about the engagement strategy. When we create content, we are razor focused on who's gonna watch this, why are they gonna watch it. The team, Shweta and the team are thinking about the headline and the thumbnail before we even film the video. And I think if you have those engagement strategies in place early and you understand who the audience are and who you're going after early on, then it's a lot easier to target. So I'd say those two things: focusing on platforms that have opportunities where there's not enough creators, and two, being very clear about your engagement strategies so that you have very deliberate about going after that audience early on, and it's not kind of a guessing game.
Could I just ask a follow-up question? When you're engaging with audience through this medium and you have such a wide range of people to cater to, and with the languages coming in, For a traditional media house, like say for example a national media house like Indian Express or Hindustan Times, most of the times the stories that they do have they are based out, like they have a specific strategy, and the stories are accepted based on scale, that if it's national in nature it gets accepted, or if it's not, it's smaller in scale, it gets rejected. So how do you go about your in like the targeting strategy? How do you reach out to your audience, especially when like it's segmented in nature? Like usually it's easier with a uniform strategy, right? So
I don't know if it is easier. And I'll tell you why, because by that same criteria of focusing mainly on national stories or stories of national importance, coupled with focusing on things that have already achieved virality, right? So traditional media will find, a video that's gone viral of a suicide bomber or something crazy that's happened. It's very hard to differentiate themselves, because what they find is they're all basically doing the same thing. They're all running the same headlines. If PM Modi has given a speech and you're all taking the same ANI wire copy or video feed, what reason do I have to watch that on your platform or another platform? It's all exactly the same. And I think that's the challenge that they have. On our side, once we have a very clear idea of who our audience are, we've created a very clear checklist of what our stories need to tick to reach that audience. So on each of our shows, we have 6 questions, for example. Does the story have this, 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 and this? And that's our criteria. So if theirs is national importance and a bunch of stuff, ours is a different criteria. We're also, as I said, being deliberate about going after people on platforms like Facebook. Our engagement team drew up a mind map of options. So we're doing a piece on people that, disabled runners in Delhi. We will join 200 Facebook groups with disability groups across India. We'll get in touch with them weeks in advance. We'll tell them the story is coming out. When the story comes out, we'll populate those groups. So we try to build a really clear engagement strategy. So we are going after that audience.
thank you so much.
Awesome. One more question, then I got to run, guys.
Tom, yeah.
Hello. Could I ask a question, sir?
Yes, please,
No.
go ahead.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, sir. It's a similar question. I was just inquisitive about something. I just wanted to ask that Snapchat is a place which does not have a very big user base. Like there are many people from probably people of our generation use Snapchat more, and people from previous generations don't use Snapchat that often. So is it difficult to cater to that audience, or how does that work?
Yeah, you're saying that the audience is limited, right? Because it's kind of in a very specific age bracket.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. So again, going back to my previous point, it's one of those platforms that lacks equilibrium, where you've got a walled garden of Discover publishers, so it makes it a lot easier to compete because you're not having to compete with a whole noise of people. It makes it easier for us because we know exactly who we're going after. We know that they're 13 to 24. We know that they've probably got the latest iPhone or Android device. They're pretty wealthy. They're predominantly in the US, but also in Norway, the UK, France, Germany, Australia, now a huge growth in India. So in that respect, I think it makes it a lot easier for us. It's targeted, it's specific. We know exactly what we're going after. We had a lot more challenge on Facebook, despite having 2 billion people on the platform, getting the same kind of audience that we've managed to accumulate on Snapchat. So, I mean, just for comparative sake, our Facebook channel has, 200,000 subscribers. Our Snapchat channels have 2 million. So I don't think it's necessarily about how big the total audience of a platform is. It's about your ability to penetrate within that audience.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yusuf, just for taking time. And I don't know what time is it now. You're still in the Gold Coast, right?
Yeah, I am. It's almost 11 p.m., but I'm very early into my shift. I work funny hours.
Yeah, sorry to have woken you.
No. I'm loving it.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking time for this, and it's been always incredible. then do let me know when you are in this part of the world.
When I can. I don't know if you guys know this. I'm banned from India. I've lived there for a year, visited a bunch of times, and on my last visit, I arrived at the airport and they deported me with no reason. I have a British, Australian, and South African passport, 3 passports, and a Muslim name.
It's probably the filters.
It's definitely the filters. But yeah, I got sent away, flown off to the UK when I arrived. No reason. They're like, no, sir, Delhi, sir. I was like, what does that even mean? And then I've now applied for visas on all 3 passports and been denied on all for the last couple of years. It sucks. The day I get a visa to India, I'm coming back. I love India.
Okay, here's a pitch for you. Make the same filter with a lotus in saffron. It will work. Most definitely will work.
Yeah, correct.
That's the trick, is it?
Yeah, saffronize everything. Every filter should be in saffron.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Yusuf. So yeah, stay in touch, and we'll get back to you later.
Amazing. Thanks, guys. It's so great to see you guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.